Dear audience, my name is Anna Maria Migdal. I'm Associate Professor of the University of Social Sciences and specialize in intercultural communication. Today, I will deliver a lecture on intercultural communication, the first module in the European Union project SchoolinHUB. I will focus on the following topics. First, understanding culture and national culture. Second, understanding cultural norms and values. Third, the most important cultural dimensions from a communication perspective. Fourth, nature of intercultural communication. Sixth, strategies for effective intercultural communication. And seventh, managing misunderstanding, the language beyond words, interpreting body language and silence. Thank you for joining me today. Let us start with a brief introduction, the module objectives, as well as learning outcomes. Introduction. Migration across Europe brings both opportunities and challenges, including the need for effective communication in multicultural settings. Kindergartens and primary schools are increasingly diverse, requiring teachers to understand and respect different cultural norms and communication styles. The intercultural communication model supports preschool and early primary school teachers in developing skills for working in culturally diverse classrooms. Participants will learn key cultural concepts, strategies for adapting communication, and how to interpret nonverbal cues. This knowledge will support classroom interactions, parent meetings, and help create an inclusive and respectful learning environment. Among the main module's objectives, we can enumerate increasing teachers' awareness of cultural differences and their impact on the communication process in the classroom, equipping participants with practical strategies for effective communication with children and with families from diverse cultural backgrounds, and finally, developing the ability to recognize and manage misunderstandings resulting from linguistic differences and nonverbal communication codes, like body language, silence, gestures, etc. Upon completion of this module, as far as knowledge is concerned, the participants will be able to, first, explain what cultural norms and values are and their significance in different societies. Second, distinguish between high context and low context cultures and describe their impact on communication. Third, understand the role of nonverbal communication, like gestures, facial expressions, silence, in cross-cultural interactions. Upon completion of this module, as far as skills are concerned, the participant will be able to, first, identify potential sources of misunderstandings in cross-cultural communication. Second, adapt their language and communication style to an audience from a different cultural background. And third, analyze educational situations from the perspective of cultural and communication differences. Upon completion of this module, as far as competences are concerned, the participant will be able to, first, demonstrate openness and respect toward other cultures and viewpoints different from their own. Second, show empathy and a willingness to reflect on their own cultural biases, and finally, create an atmosphere of trust and understanding in a multicultural classroom. Let us right now focus on understanding culture and national culture. One of the problems we encounter in dealing with culture is that there are so many different meanings and definitions attached to the term. Let us look at some of them. According to Edward Taylor, culture is that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by a man as a member of a society. Another definition proposed by social psychologist Gert Hofstede says that culture is the collective programming of the mind which distinguishes the member of one group or category of people from another. According to Gert Hofstede, we can recognize 3 levels of human mental programming. The first level is personality. An individual's personality is their unique set of mental programs which they don't share with any other human being. It is based upon traits that are partly inherited with the individual's unique set of genes and partly learned. Learned means modified by the influence of collective programming culture as well as unique personal experiences. The second level is culture. Culture is learned, not inherited. It derives from one's social environment, not from one's genes. Culture should be distinguished from human nature on one side and from an individual's personality on the other. Although exactly where the borders lie between human nature and culture and between culture and personality is a matter of discussion among social scientists. The third level of human mental programming is human nature. Human nature is what all human beings, from the British professor to the Australian Aborigine, have in common. It represents the universal level in one's mental software. It is inherited with one's genes. Within the computer analogy, it is the operating system which determines one's physical ability and basic psychological functioning. The human ability to feel fear, anger, love, joy, sadness, the need to associate with others, to play and exercise oneself, and the facility to observe the environment and talk about it with other humans all belongs to this level of mental programming. However, what one does with these feelings, how one expresses fear, joy, observations, and so on, is modified by culture. Human nature, by the way, is not as human as the term suggests, because certain aspects of it are shared with parts of the animal world. Another definition of culture says that culture is communication and communication is culture, and this definition was proposed by Edward Hall. Let us right now focus on the second issue, understanding cultural norms and values. Every community has cultural norms and values shaping behavior, communication, and relationships. Norms are unwritten rules widely understood within a society, while values are broader guiding principles. According to psychologist Shalom Schwartz, values are desirable motivational goals. Broadly speaking, cultural values shape how people prefer to manage and be managed, as well as their attitudes toward work. Several common frameworks exist for understanding cultural values. Cultural norms are passed down through generations, influencing emotional expression, attitudes toward authority, space, time, social hierarchy, and cultural differences. Values help to interpret and evaluate behaviors as well as decisions. Ford's theory of cultural values suggests that all cultures face three social issues, and the institutions developed to address these issues shape members' values. The first issue is the need to define the nature of the relationship between the individual and the group. How culture resolves this affects values concerning conservatism, intellectual autonomy, and affective autonomy. The second need is to ensure responsible behavior that will maintain social order. Resolution of this issue influences member values concerning hierarchy and egalitarianism. Finally, cultures must address the relationship between humankind and the natural as well as social world. The institutions designed to address these needs are reflected in mastery and harmony values. In multicultural education, teachers must recognize that children and families may have different norms and values, shaping their behavior and communication. Differences in views on authority, discipline, or respect can cause misunderstandings if not acknowledged. Educators should build intercultural competences to identify and adapt to those differences. Reflecting on one's own values and cultural background is also key. Understanding cultural norms and values supports effective communication and helps to create an inclusive, respectful learning environment for all children. Let us right now focus on the most important cultural dimensions from a communication perspective. As we already know, culture is a contested term with multiple meanings depending on various contexts and discourses. One way to measure an abstract term, such as culture, is to operationalize it and break it down into bipolar dimensions that can to some extent be empirically verified. We can recognize several typologies of cultural dimensions developed by such researchers like Edward Hall, Gerd Hofstede, Fons Troppenaars and Charles Hampton Turner, or Globe Project. Right now, we will focus on those dimensions that can be the most important in classroom settings. Let us start with Edward Hall typology. According to Edward Hall, we can distinguish high context cultures as well as low context cultures. In low context cultures, people value informality, direct communication, results, and fast pace. In those cultures, non-verbal communication is less important than verbal communication. Examples of low context cultures are the United States, Canada, especially British part of Canada, Germany, German part of Switzerland. In high context cultures, people value formality, face-saving communication, relationships, and the slower pace needed to develop relationships. Non-verbal communication is important. Examples of high context cultures are Japan, China, South Korea, or India. According to Edward Hall, we can also distinguish monochronic cultures as well as polychronic cultures. In monochronic cultures, people do one thing at a time and they are concentrated on the job. They take time commitments like deadline schedules seriously. They are committed to the job and adhere rigorously to plans. They are low context and need information. They are also concerned about not disturbing others and follow the rules of privacy and consideration. They emphasize promptness and are accustomed to short-term relationships. Examples of monochronic cultures are the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, or Germany. In polychronic cultures, people do many things at once. Therefore, they are highly distractible and subject to interruptions. They consider time commitments as an objective to be achieved if possible. They are committed to people and human relationships. They change plans often and easily. They are more concerned with those who are closely related, so family, friends, close business associates, than with privacy. They are high context and already have information. They base promptness on the relationship, and they have a strong tendency to build a lifetime relationships. Let us right now focus on Herd-Hofstede typology. Herd-Hofstede distinguishes 6 dimensions of culture: power distance, from low to high power distance, individualism and collectivism, masculinity and femininity, anxiety avoidance, from low anxiety avoidance to high anxiety avoidance, short-term orientation and long-term orientation, and restraint as well as indulgence. From the classroom settings perspective and from communication perspective, 2 of them are of a particular importance: power distance as well as individualism and collectivism. Power distance is the extent to which the less powerful members of society accept and expect that power is distributed inequally. The fundamental issue here is how a society handles inequalities among people. In low Power-distance societies, people strive to equalize the distribution of power and demand justification for inequalities of power. People in societies exhibiting a large degree of power distance accept a hierarchical order in which everybody has a place and which needs no further justification. In low power distance cultures, inequalities among people should be minimized. Social relationships should be handled with care, and less powerful people and more powerful people should be interdependent. In high power distance cultures, inequalities among people are expected and desired. Status should be balanced with restraint, and less powerful people should be dependent. Examples of low power distance cultures are, for instance, Scandinavian countries. Examples of high power distance cultures are, for instance, Japan, China, and India. Power distance can be strongly witnessed in classroom settings. The index of power distance can greatly influence the teacher-student relationship, which is directly related to communication and classroom interactions. In Western countries, like the United States, power distance in classroom is low, allowing students to speak freely and discuss with their teachers, as well as to say what they like and what they dislike without fear or hesitation. Whereas in countries with high power distance, such as China and Japan, the teacher is regarded as superior, which is why the students try their best to communicate formally and only within the scope of a lecture, because of the fear of punishment or offense. In high power distance cultures, students depend on teachers. Students treat teachers with respect, even outside class. The education is teacher-centered. Teachers initiate all communication in class. Teachers are gurus who transfer personal wisdom. Parents are supposed to side with teachers to keep students in order. Quality of learning depends on the excellence of teachers. In low power distance cultures, teachers treat students as equals. Students treat teachers as equals. Education is student-centered. Students initiate some communication in class. Teachers are experts who transfer impersonal truths. Parents may side with students against teachers. Quality of learning depends on two-way communication and the excellence of students. Let us focus on the second dimension, suggested by Hofstede. Individualism can be defined as a preference for a loosely knit social framework in which individuals are expected to take care of only themselves and their immediate families. Collectivists represent a preference for a tightly knit framework in society in which individuals can expect their relatives or members of a particular in-group to look after them in exchange for unquestioning loyalty. A society's position on this dimension is reflected in whether people's self-image is defined in terms of I or we. And in collectivistic cultures, it is always we. In individualistic cultures, everyone grows up, look after themselves and their immediate nuclear family. Children learn to think in terms of I. The same value standards are supposed to apply to everyone, which is the rule of universalism. Speaking one's mind is a characteristic of an honest person, and individual interests prevail over collective interests. In collectivistic cultures, people are born into extended families or other in-groups that continue protecting them in exchange for loyalty. Children learn to think in terms we. Value standards differ for in-groups and out-groups according to the rule of exclusionism. Harmony should always be maintained, and direct confrontations should be avoided. Collectivistic interests prevail over individual interests. A teacher in an individualistic culture like the United States, Canada, or Germany is expected to mainly rely on individualistic approaches, such as encouraging students to become independent thinkers, focusing on individual needs, showing speech prominence, expressing their opinions freely, and being assertive. Teachers in individualistic cultures can use open criticism of student work as a strategy for further improvement. Individualistic teaching environments are mainly student-centric. Teachers are more likely to facilitate knowledge transfer by fostering conceptual change in students' understanding of the world. A teacher from a collectivistic culture like China, Japan, or India is expected to use transmissive, teacher-centered teaching practices. A collectivist individual likes to be identified as a part of a group rather than standing out as an individual. Such as individuals place more importance on the views, needs, and preferences of the group over their own. Collectivistic teaching environments are mainly teacher-centric. Let us right now focus on nature of intercultural communication. Traditionally, intercultural communication has been defined as all communication between people with different linguistic or cultural backgrounds. According to this definition, cultural groups can be attributed with specific characteristics that explain their communicative actions and predictive potential misunderstandings in multicultural settings. Spencer, Otte, and Franklin restrict intercultural communication only to those communicative encounters in which linguistic or cultural differences become relevant for processing the outcomes of interlingual communication. Samovar and Porter define intercultural communication as occurring whenever a message producer is a member of one culture and the message receiver is a member of another. While Collier and Thomas define intercultural communication as contact between persons who identify themselves as distinct from one another in cultural terms. What is important? Intercultural communication can be challenging due to differences in language, perceptions, and communication styles. Understanding these barriers in developing effective strategies for overcoming them. We can recognize three main types of intercultural communication barriers. The first type of barriers is connected with language differences and misinterpretation. We recognize linguistic barriers. So differences in vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation can lead to confusion. We recognize also idiomatic expressions. Phrases that make sense in one culture may be confusing in another. For example, break a leg in English. Translation issues. Some words or concepts may not have direct equivalence in other languages, according to Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Misunderstanding tone and meaning. Some cultures use indirect speech, while others are more direct. As we distinguish high context and low context cultures. The second type of barriers has its source in stereotypes, biases, and prejudices. Stereotypes are oversimplified generalization about a group. Biases are unconscious or conscious favoritism towards a group affecting perception. Prejudices are preconceived negative attitudes towards a cultural group. The third type of barriers is related to nonverbal communication. Misunderstanding gestures. A thumbs up means approval in Western cultures, but can be offensive in the Middle East. Eye contact. In Western cultures, direct eye contact shows confidence, In some Asian cultures, it can be seen as disrespectful. Personal space. Proxemics, which is understood as a use of space, differs. For instance, Latin Americans stand closer than North Americans. Facial expressions. Some cultures display emotions openly, for instance, Italians, while others are more reserved, for instance, Japanese. Let us right now focus on strategies for effective intercultural communication. Teachers should prioritize the use of straightforward and accessible language, steering clear of idiomatic expressions and complex grammatical structures. This approach not only enhances comprehension, but also fosters inclusivity among students from varied cultural backgrounds. Tailoring communication to meet the specific needs of listeners is essential for effectively bridging language and cultural differences. In the multicultural classrooms, several effective strategies can be employed. First, cultivating respectful relationships, in the meaning of fostering an environment of trust and mutual respect among students, is foundational, allowing for deeper connections and a sense of belonging. Second, encouraging cultural sharing, actively inviting students to share their cultural narratives and experiences enriches the classroom dialogue and promotes a deeper understanding of diversity. Third, utilizing diverse educational resources. Integrating a wide range of teaching materials that reflects various cultures not only engages students, but also validates their identities and histories. Fourth, promoting collaboration. Facilitating teamwork among students from different cultural backgrounds nurtures an atmosphere of cooperation and mutual respect, reinforcing the value of diverse perspectives. Successful intercultural communication hinges on the pillars of flexibility, respect, and empathy. It requires a continuous commitment to honing communication skills and maintaining an openness to engage in a meaningful dialogue with both students and their families. This ongoing practice not only enhances the learning experience, but also strengthens community ties. Intercultural communication involves exchanging information between people from different cultural backgrounds and requires both language skills and cultural understanding. Key threads for successful communication include openness, curiosity, empathy, and respect for other cultures. Researchers have defined intercultural communication competence in various ways. A widely accepted definition is that competent communication is interaction but is perceived as effective in fulfilling certain rewarding objectives in a way that is also appropriate to the context in which the interaction occurs. The key elements in competence are effectiveness and appropriateness. Effectiveness is the ability to reach the intended goals through interaction with other participants or the environment. And appropriateness is the ability to communicate in ways that lead to desired goals. According to scientists, intercultural competence has four major components: knowledge, affective, psychomotor, and situational. Based on these four components, Schuang introduced three processes for intercultural competence, which include affective, dealing with emotions during communication; behavioral, dealing with proper intercultural behavior; and cognitive processes, dealing with contextual requirements and intercultural awareness. Let us focus on the last, however, very important aspect: managing misunderstandings, the language beyond words, interpreting body language and silence. We can recognize many types of nonverbal communication, like kinesics, body movement, as well as facial expressions, paralanguage, haptics, and proxemics. All of them are affected by culture and can be understood in different ways. Kinesics is the study of how we use body movement and facial expressions. Among very important subcategory of kinesics, we can recognize oculesics, namely eye contact. Another category of nonverbal communication is paralanguage, vocalics. Vocalics is the study of paralanguage, which includes the vocal qualities that go along with verbal messages, such as pitch, volume, rage. Pitch helps convey meaning, regulate conversational flow, and communicate the intensity of a message. Speaking rate refers to how fast or slow a person speaks and can lead others to form impressions about our emotional state, credibility, and intelligence. As with volume, variation in speaking rate can interfere with the ability of others to receive and understand verbal messages. Another category of nonverbal communication is proxemics. Proxemics is a form of nonverbal communication in which we maintain distance. We all have varying definitions of what our personal space is. And these definitions are contextual and depends on the situation as well as relationship. The next category of nonverbal communication is haptics. Haptics is a branch of nonverbal communication in which people interact or communicate by touch without using words. Let us right now look at some examples of cultural differences in nonverbal communication. Throughout North America, Western Europe, and most English-speaking countries, vertical head nodding signals agreement or acknowledgement. Bulgaria presents notable contradictions to this pattern. Vertical head nodding indicates disagreement or refusal, while horizontal head shaking signals agreement. This reversal traces back to resistance to the Ottoman rule, where subtle defiance became embedded in cultural expression. Western cultures, particularly in the United States or Canada, value emotional authenticity through facial expression. Genuine smiles, frowns, and surprised expressions are interpreted as honest communication. Suppressing these expressions might be perceived as dishonesty or social detachment. East Asian cultures, including Japan, South Korea, and parts of China, emphasize facial composure as social courtesy. Expressive emotional display, even positive expressions, can be interpreted as lack of self-control, of social awkwardness. The concept of saving face extends literally to facial expressions. Maintaining neutral expressions demonstrates respect for others and social harmony. Smiling doesn't necessarily indicate happiness, but also may signal politeness, confusion, or even embarrassment. Western European and North American cultures generally interpret sustained eye contact as engagement, honesty, and respect. Avoiding eye contact might signal dishonesty, discomfort, or disrespect. Professional contexts particularly emphasize eye contact as demonstrating confidence and trustworthiness. Many East Asian cultures, particularly Japan and parts of China, consider direct eye contact with authority figures or elders disrespectful. This reflects hierarchical social structures where deference is shown through subtle avoidance rather than direct engagement. Silence is another important part of communication, carrying various meanings that affect relationships. It can punish, calm emotions, build tension, provoke reflection, or show disagreement. Understanding silence is key to intercultural competence. While low-context cultures, like those in the West, emphasize directness and explicit communication, Japan, as an example of a high-context culture, values subtlety and understatement, making silence a significant element of communication. What may seem like a misunderstanding in one culture can signify respect or deep reflection in another. Remaining silent is one of the behavioral elements that differ significantly between Japanese and Western cultures, often leading to interpretative challenges. In Japan, silence in response to a question is a sign of humility and deep contemplation, highlighting the weight of the speaker's words. In the West, however, such silence might be interpreted as disagreement, disengagement, or even disrespect. In case of Japan, silence is very complicated phenomenon. And we can recognize 4 main dimensions of Japanese silence. Fruitfulness as the first one, social discretion as the second one, embarrassment as the third one, and finally, defiance. Therefore, in Japan, silence may have several, sometimes contradictory meanings. The first, silence as a sign of respect. In conversations, staying silent when someone speaks shows active listening and respect. Interrupting someone is considered impolite, so people often pause before responding. Second, silence as expressing agreement or disagreement. A quiet nod or a simple can indicate agreement, while hesitation or a long silence can suggest disagreement or uncertainty. Instead of directly saying no, which is impolite, Japanese people may respond with a vague statement or silence in order to avoid confrontation. The third, silence as reading the atmosphere. Kokiyomo. Japanese people often rely on kokiyomo, meaning reading the air, in order to understand unspoken messages. Managing intercultural misunderstandings requires attention to both verbal and nonverbal cues. So teachers should develop active listening and empathy in order to recognize students' nonverbal emotions and needs, as these often speak louder than words. In educational practice, effective in managing misunderstandings also means being open to dialogue, willing to ask clarifying questions, and able to express doubts in a respectful manner. Given the multitude of meanings that words can convey, along with the intricate layers of nonverbal communication, misunderstandings frequently arise in intercultural communication. These misinterpretations are not merely common occurrences. They can create significant barriers to effective dialogue and relationship building across various cultural contexts. Managing such misunderstandings is crucial, particularly in diverse environments like schools, where students come together from a variety of backgrounds and life experiences. In the classroom settings, teachers find themselves continually observed by their students during lessons, which adds another layer of complexity to their role. The verbal cues they use, tone, vocabulary, and phrasing, combined with nonverbal signals, such as facial expressions, gestures, and body language, are subject to individual interpretation. Each student may approach these cues through the lens of their cultural background, leading to varied understandings of the same communication. Therefore, it is essential for educators to develop a heightened awareness of their own nonverbal behaviors and the potential implications of their gestures, expressions, and tone of voice. For instance, a smile might be seen as encouragement by one student, or interpreted as condescension by another. Unintended signals, such as crossing arms or avoiding eye contact, can unintentionally convey disinterest or hostility, complicating the learning environment further. By recognizing and proactively managing these unintentional cues, teachers can foster clear communication, reduce the likelihood of misunderstandings, and create a more inclusive and supportive classroom atmosphere for all students. Body language, gestures, facial expressions, posture, eye contact, and distance conveys key information. Our cultural background shapes how we use and interpret these signals. What is the most important? We need to be open. We need to have empathy. And we need to understand how different we are. I would like to thank you, all of you, for participation in this webinar. I hope that everyone is convinced right now how important intercultural communication in the multicultural classroom setting is. I'm looking forward to possibility to answer to all your doubts and questions. So please feel free to contact me directly. Thank you very much for your attendance.